A bit of a morning. I've pretty much just woken up. I didn't really sleep properly last night. I'm not really sleeping that well. I'm very, very tired. Exams are looming, which makes me stressed. And I just tried to open up my Goodreads so I could see what books I was going to talk about for all the books I read this month. And Goodreads isn't working. I know, Goodreads doesn't crash. I guess I'm just going to try wing it and remember all the books I read, but I know one of the first books I did read in this month was Serious Concerns by Wendy Cope, which is a poetry collection, and I massively enjoyed this collection. I loved it, and I had a really big creative burst after reading it, which is how I know that I've really loved a poetry collection. This is such a funny collection of poems. I genuinely proper laughed at a lot of the poems in here. Some of them are so silly and some of them are funny because they're true, and a lot of them are actually really touching as well. There's a lot of things about relationships, and it's a little bit feministy. The first poem in the collection is Bloody Men, which is a hilarious poem and not what you'd expect from that title. There's a lot to do with drinking in here as well, and also the nature of being a poet and what it's like to be a poet, which I really enjoyed. I enjoyed the entirety of this collection, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone. Next up, I read Middlemarch by George Eliot, and I have mentioned this book in passing in a lot of videos because this book has been a part of my life for a very long time now. It is a beast. It is massive. I think most editions of it are around 700 pages, but mine's 900, which makes it look all the more intimidating. Reading this in sort of the last half of March, and then I finished it up at the start of April, and I feel like I've achieved. It's kind of difficult to describe what Middlemarch is about, other than it is about Middlemarch. It is about loads of people that live in Middlemarch and the way their relationships with each other and their actions affect one another, and how the people in a place shape a place. I did enjoy this book mostly. It was quite difficult to get through towards the end. The sort of last third of the novel, which is quite chunky, it's 300 pages of this edition, was a struggle to kind of push through because I was kind of done with it by the time I got there. I feel like I would have enjoyed it a lot more if I didn't have constantly in the back of my head, you need to do an exam on this. You need to be paying attention. Goodreads is back. I've been saved. When I realised I didn't have Goodreads as an aid, I was looking around my room and looking around my bookshelf, seeing if something would spring out of me, because I knew I was missing a book from the start of the month, and I thought, if I just see it, I'll remember that I read it. The reason I didn't see it was because I read it on an ebook. I read a book that so many people massively enjoy, and that was Throne of Glass by Sarah J Maas, and I was no different. I loved this book. I thought it was great. I didn't think it was the most amazing thing I'd ever read, but it was such a nice, easy, enjoyable, funny, intriguing read. So Throne of Glass tells the story of an 18-year-old assassin called something like Selena? Something like that. I don't know how to pronounce her name. But she has served a year's hard labor in a salt mine as punishment for her crimes. And then she is brought in front of the Crown Prince, Prince Dorian, and he tells her she can gain her freedom if she fights as his champion in a competition to find a new assassin. And then if she wins this competition, she needs to work for the crown for 4 years, and then she will gain her freedom. I'm not going to say much more than that because either 1, you've already read this book, or 2, you're going to, and I don't want to spoil it for you. Things I really enjoyed about this book is the fact that she's the only girl fighting and everyone underestimates her, and they use that to her advantage. She's really sarcastic and she's just really kind of cutthroat, both literally and in the way she speaks. I love how into books she was. I found that a really just small but really great touch. Then along came the Genrethon. I am not going to tell you my thoughts on all of the books from the Genrethon because I've already done that in my Genrethon Wrap-Up, which I will link below. But I read The Vile Village by Lemony Snicket, Every Man by Philip Roth, 50 Shades of Earl Grey by Fanny Merkin, Robert Louis Stevenson's The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Da Vinci's Tiger by L.M. Eliot, The Rats by James Herbert, and Natasha Walters' Living Dolls, The Return of Sexism. Oh, and Caroline Duffy's Rapture, which I have since returned to the library. So I haven't read a huge amount after Genrethon. As I said at the start of the video, exams are looming, so I'm doing a lot of critical reading and I'm doing a lot of like making notes and stuff. But the first book I did read since the end of the Genrethon was Alice and the Fly by James Rice. And I really, really enjoyed this book. I thought it was really good. This book was by no means perfect, but it was definitely like a good and decent and easy to get through read. This tells the story of Greg, who is a teenage boy, and we don't really learn a huge amount about his condition, but it is spoken about that he may have like schizophrenia, which is I have lots of thoughts about the diagnosis of schizophrenia. We know that Greg is afraid of them. Them is bolded and with a capital T in the book. And we don't know what them are for quite a bit, but it becomes obvious fairly quickly. We also see Greg's growing obsession with a girl called Alice. And we get snippets of police interviews with various people in Greg's life, which take place after New Year's Eve, and we know leading up to New Year's Eve that something is going to happen with Greg, and that is the longest chapter in the book, like significantly longer than the other ones. I really enjoyed that format. I thought it was really good. I do feel like I'm going to start rambling because I do have a lot of thoughts on this, so I think I'm going to do a full review of this. If you like The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Night Time, I think you might like this book. Next, I read A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf, which I read for Jean's Feminist Orchestra. I'm really, really glad that this book was on the Feminist Orchestra TBR because I needed a reason to read some Virginia Woolf. She's been lacking in my life and it's not been good. I think it was really important for me as both a female reader, a female writer, and a very amateur literary critic to read A Room of One's Own. So A Room of One's Own is sort of compiled from Virginia Woolf's talks at two women's colleges in Cambridge University. In this, she talks about what it's like to be a female writer and the female literary tradition. And in this, Woolf argues that women need both a figurative and literal space in order to become part of a patriarchal dominated literary tradition. And, you know, that's what I love reading about. It combines so many of my favourite things like gender and literary tradition, and it was so good. One of the really great arguments that she makes that really stood out for me was talking about if Shakespeare had a sister that was just as talented as he was, would things have been different for her? She also talks a lot about Jane Austen and the Brontes and George Eliot and Elizabeth Gaskell, and I think if you are even just slightly familiar with their work, then you will really enjoy those references. So I'm filming this a couple days before the end of April, and I am currently reading 2 more books, and I will just talk about them because I'm almost finished them. First one of those is Look Who's Back by Timur Vermes, or Vermes, I'm not sure. German people, correct me. But this tells the story of what it would be like if Hitler came back in 2011. Hitler just wakes up one day, he's alive, he's in his Nazi uniform, and he starts wandering around modern day Berlin, and he's like, well, this isn't the Reich, everything's changed. And then people start to think he is a Hitler impersonator, a Hitler comedian. Everyone thinks he's like satirical, and he gets put on TV and he goes viral. I thought I would really enjoy this book, and I'm not massively enjoying it. I am going to finish it because I haven't got much left. And I think it has been getting better from when I got kind of bored with it, but I just found I didn't want to spend loads of time with this book. I think it would work better as like a short story or just a shorter novel. I do want to assert this is genuinely funny, but it's just, it gets a bit old. Next, I am almost finished We Are All Completely Beside Ourselves by Karen Joy Fowler, which I have been buddy reading with Lauren from Lauren in the Books, and I love this book. Oh my god. I am going to do a full review of this book once I finished it, and it will not be spoiler free. So you've been warned. I will warn at the start of the video that it will not be spoiler free. This is about a woman called Rosie who is recounting her past and putting her past back together and re-examining her life. And we learn that her two siblings disappeared when she was quite young. Her sister Fern disappeared, and then her brother Lowell disappeared, and it is about kind of the effects of those disappearances on her. And for the first few pages, quite a few pages, we don't know something that is quite important. And there's a point to why we don't know it. And I'm not going to say because it's a massive spoiler. That's why the review I'm going to do is not going to be spoiler free. The writing is absolutely beautiful as well, and you can really tell that Karen Joy Fowler loves books from how she writes. So that's something I always adore finding in fiction, is being able to see how much the author loves what they do. They are all the books that I read in April. There were quite a few. I didn't count them up. Hold on. Counted them up. So far I have finished 13 books, and hopefully I will finish those other two, which will take me up to 15, which I think is the biggest monthly total I've had so far in the year, which is baffling. I've been doing a ton of other reading as well. Like, I've been reading like critical stuff for essays and studying, so I'm kind of overwhelmed with that. I'm turning into a bit of a reading machine.